Hi everyone, it's Cathy Zielske. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I've got a trio of ink blended Christmas trees that are modern, that feature a little emboss resist, and that have been gathered together over an ink blended area that has been topped with glimmer paste. It's very shiny, it's very monochromatic, and it's pretty clean and simple at its core. So let's take a look at the products. I'm using a trio of greens from Tim Holtz and Ranger Distress Oxide colors that I love. And I'm going to be using stamps here. This is from my Clean Line Christmas set. Now, I am using the coordinating dies, but you can certainly do a project like this without the dies. I've got some Nouveau Glimmer Paste and a palette knife. That is the Moonstone color. I'm going to be using some Gina K embossing ink and a couple different embossing powders from Brutus Monroe. I've got one blender brush and this masking stencil from Tailored Expressions. And I'll be using some Neenah Solar White cardstock for this project, and of course a few other products as we go. Let's get started. These masking templates are kind of cool. They have this grooved line etched into the template. So if you line up your 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel and you put it in place just like that, your masked area is going to be perfectly placed on the card panel. So once that's lined up, I'm just taping it down with some purple tape to hold it in place. And then I'm going to start my ink blending. This is really simple blending. The nice thing is you don't have to have a perfect blend, because if you're putting anything shiny over it, like glimmer paste, or maybe Gina K Designs Glitz Glitter Gel in the clear color, it's going to make up for any imperfections in the blend. Now, Distress Oxides do tend to get a little creamy and smooth out a bit, but my blend was pretty basic. I just wanted it to be green, going from a bit lighter to a bit darker. And I'll have all of the supplies listed below too if you're wondering, what color was that again? Yeah, I got you covered. So blending this all in, and then I'm going to go ahead and just wipe it off with a cloth here just around the edge of the stencil, because I don't want to transfer any more ink than necessary when I add the glimmer paste. Again, this is the Moonstone color, and I'm just going to I probably get too much when I do this, and I'm showing you this in real time because I'm not the most, how does one say, adept with applying glimmer paste. I have messed up more card projects than I care to admit, but this one I did okay. Just smoothing it on like shiny, glimmery frosting. And I'm trying to keep even pressure because I don't want to go back and forth too many times, because that's where I start to have mistakes, when I go over it and then start leaving lines, and then it's a hot mess. But this was pretty good. Going right over it until it was smooth. I'm going to wipe it off on a wet paper towel because I don't want to put this back in the jar because it's already got color on it from the Distress Oxides. So I'm scraping it off and re-smoothing that out, wiping it off on the wet paper towel, and then going to gently peel it up off the tape and lift straight up. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to set this aside and let it dry. Next, I will stamp my trees. I've got them positioned on a piece of Neenah Solar White. This is the 110-pound classic Crest. And I'm going to prep the area with my embossing magic, just because I don't want my powder to stick anywhere other than where I am stamping my sticky embossing ink. And I'm going to be using my Gina K Designs embossing ink. This has been my go-to ink lately. I really like it. I'm going to ink these stamps up, and I'm going to stamp this down. And I decided to stamp it twice, actually. I'm not going to show you the second time, but I thought because they are delicate stamps, I'm going to press it down once, and then I will do that a second time off camera to get a really nice impression on the cardstock. I will sprinkle on my white embossing powder. This is Alabaster from Brutus Monroe. Tap off the excess, and then you can see the trees, just like that. I'll get my heat tool nice and hot, and then quickly melt the powder. They look like they're disappearing, but I assure you, they're there. It's just getting smooth, melted, and shiny. Once that's done, it's time to start the embossing. Now, I'm going to wipe off the brush that I used before on a paper towel and just make sure that it looks pretty light colored. You don't need to change out brushes. This is fine if you're sticking with one color family. And I'm just going to lay one color over one tree, have it be a little bit darker at the bottom and maybe a little lighter at the top, and then wipe it off, and you can see where that smooth embossing powder resists the ink, allowing the stamped white image to come through. I love this. It's so simple. It's a great way to add color to stamped images, especially if, well, number one, maybe you're not good with hand coloring things with Copic markers or watercolors or whatever. You can always lay down and blend on some ink in a single color, wipe away the excess, and then you have a beautiful image with a clean white image that shines through. So these three colors are great. Adding them on, wiping off the excess. Emboss Resist in all its glory. Just like that. Next, I'm going to cut these apart because I'm going to die cut these. I do have the coordinating die, but this tree is really basic. In fact, I'm going to link to a video I did without the coordinating die and using the same trees, because you don't need the die to do this, but I designed the die set and I happened to have it and I thought, this is going to work great. So I'm taping them into place, running it through my Platinum 6 die cut machine and popping it out. And that's how I cut out my trees. Next, I'll stamp my sentiment, and this just says Merry Christmas. I'm stamping this down again on some Neenah Solar white cardstock. Also doing this one twice, and I'll show you that one. Because it's delicate, and I found with these sentiments, if you go twice, you're going to get a perfect impression. So I'll sprinkle on some more Brutus Monroe powder. This is the gilded, the gold powder that I really love. And I'll flick off the excess and then go ahead and heat set that until the powder is smooth and melted. It's a really pretty gold. Now I'm going to cut this out with the coordinating die. The die set does have dies to cut out sentiments, and what I like to do is create a cutting template out of another piece of cardstock, frame it out just like that so that there's no guesswork, because these dies can be tricky to cut out these sentiments. But if you do this, you drop it into that opening and it kind of locks into place, and then you can easily tape that down, run that through, and get a perfectly cut sentiment. Of course, you don't need to have the coordinating die to do this. You could just stamp the Merry Christmas sentiment right under the beautiful ink blended panel, and I think it would also be gorgeous. Now that the blended glimmery area is dry, I'm going to cut out a panel using some of my A2 layers dies to get a perfectly trimmed panel that's a little smaller than my card front. I will go ahead and score a card base. This will be top folding 5.5 by 4.25, which is US A2 size. And I like to tape my card bases closed just because I like them to stay flat while I'm trying to align the other panels on top of the card base. I covered the back of my card panel with foam tape, and this is kind of nice because it actually helps to flatten out the area with the glimmer paste, which tends to want to bubble a bit. So pressing that down with that nice framing edge of white space all around, I went ahead and popped those right on using some thin foam squares. And now I've got the third tree. I doubled up the thin foam squares so that that tree floats just a little bit above the other two, right in the center, just like that. So cute. I'm popping on the Merry Christmas that also has some thin foam underneath it, but you can see how you could just stamp that straight onto that panel, and that would have been cute too. But that's the finished card project. Lets you play with some fun techniques in a very monochromatic way. Thanks so much for watching today. I would love to have you become a subscriber to my channel if you're not already. And if you do subscribe, be sure to hit the gray bell below the video so you don't miss the next time I post.